Hello, hi everyone. Welcome back to Woo Can Cook. My name is Wesley, and this is a show where we are slowly cooking our way through all of the food from my childhood. Today we're adding to our series on Bay Area restaurant hacks with an attempt at a Jian Dui, or a fried mochi and sesame seed rice ball. More specifically, our version today is in homage to Gourmet Delite in Oakland, where you once could find the puffiest, crispiest, most wonderful dim sum desserts that you have ever encountered. Sadly, like many of the restaurants here in Oakland Chinatown, Gourmet Delite did not survive the COVID-19 pandemic, but I still thought I would take the opportunity to pay homage to a dim sum restaurant that I've been eating at for the better part of 20 years. For those who are not familiar, a Jian Dui is a dough ball that is made from glutinous rice flour that is then coated in sesame seed and filled with a sweet paste. It can be filled with many things or even nothing at all, but most commonly you will find these filled with either a sweet red bean paste or a sweet lotus paste. Today we'll be using the latter of the two because I happen to have some left over from the mooncake recipe that I did a few months back. While a Jian Dui may sound super simple, they are deceptively difficult to nail down for a few different reasons. So we will be running through a few tips and tricks that I picked up along the way while working this one out, as well as at least two different things that went horribly wrong in my own attempts that you should definitely not do. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, so starting things off, I'm combining 1/3 cup of brown sugar and 1/2 cup of boiling water and then mixing them until dissolved. Then in a separate bowl, what you'll want to do is measure out a cup of glutinous rice flour and very gradually combine it with our sugar and water mixture until a solid dough forms. What you don't want to do is add it all together at once, like my first attempt here, because your dough could potentially end up too dry and cracked like this. Then, if this does happen, you won't really be able to backtrack from this point as you normally would with an AP flour-based dough by adding more water, because the texture of our glutinous rice dough is not really going to be very receptive to adding additional liquid once it's combined. So, I'm dumping this mess out and starting all over again, and if you've done it correctly, you should find yourself with a smooth, sticky, and somewhat viscous dough that vaguely resembles Play-Doh. Then next up, I'm measuring these out to 1 1/3 ounce pieces each, or 8 equal pieces total if you've done the math correctly. And then I'm gonna flatten them out onto my cutting board at about 1 inch in diameter. Then next, I'm taking my lotus paste here, or red bean paste if that's your preference, about a tablespoon at a time and rolling it into a ball form between the palms of my hands. If you've been following along with this series, this should start looking pretty similar to our autumn mooncake recipe from back in September. I'm placing my lotus paste ball in the center of my dough, then wrapping the dough around the lotus paste and rolling it in between the palms of my hand one more time. I'm repeating this here with all 8 of my dough balls until we have 8 smooth balls of dough formed, and we're moving on to our sesame seeds. Okay, so for our sesame seeds, the big challenge here is how the hell are we going to get all of those sesame seeds to stick to these dough balls? Because the last that I checked, sesame seeds are not very sticky, and if we're not careful, they're just gonna fall right off into the fry. We're soaking our sesame seeds here in water before rolling our dough balls in them. This is gonna create just enough tackiness in our dough balls to keep our seeds adhered during the fry. I'm coating this in what might appear to be an ungodly amount of sesame seeds, but I promise it's not. And then I'm heading over to the stove for our fry. Over on the stove, I have my fryer oil rolling in my wok at a very low 250 degree F for our par cook. Then I'm gonna add my dough balls 4 at a time for 10 minutes and then removing them and resting for an additional 5. Our goal here is to give our dough a very gentle initial cook to make sure that they don't explode in the deep fry. When we pull them out here, they should still look fairly pale at this point, but should also have expanded in size by about 20 to 25%. Then next, I'm raising the temperature of my fryer to 350 degrees F and adding my dough balls back to the fryer for a final 5-minute fry. The hotter temperature here on the one hand is going to give us our nice deeply golden brown color and crispy texture. However, we also do want to remember to rotate our dough balls very frequently, because if we're not careful, they will sink to the bottom of the wok and could burn, like this. Finally, I'm pulling these out of the fryer once they're deeply golden brown and we're ready to eat. Okay, so this is a dessert that I've been eating since I was a little kid, and it's just one giant nostalgia trip for me. When I was a kid, I remember begging my dad to bring these home from the Chinatown bakeries after work, and just being super excited anytime I saw him come home with one of those pink cardboard boxes. Those ones, of course, were usually at least half a day old, and we usually had to microwave them before eating. So, if you've never eaten a Jian Dui fresh out of the fryer, these are so good. The dough balls develop a crazy amount of rise and expansion in the fry that just sort of defies physics. So when we bite into these, they're super crispy at first, then super chewy and airy once you break their outer shell, all at the same time. Then the sweet lotus paste inside gives a wonderful sweet contrast to the heavy fried texture of the dough that just sort of reaffirms why these were always one of my favorite Chinatown snacks growing up. The one caution that I will add here is that once that glutinous rice flour does cool down, it gets pretty hard and stale. So if there was ever a time that you had to eat 8 of these in one sitting, now's your chance. Okay, so that's it everyone. I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you give this one a shot yourself. Like I mentioned earlier, this one is an homage to a Jian Dui from a restaurant that sadly did not survive the COVID-19 shutdown called Gourmet Delite. Like many of the other restaurants here in Oakland Chinatown, they seem to have been hit pretty hard not just from the shutdown, but generally by a lot of the anti-Asian sentiment that has especially plagued our neighborhood over the last few months. If you happen to live in the area, I went ahead and included some links to a few of my favorite surviving Oakland Chinatown dim sum restaurants in the comments that can definitely use our support, as well as some other local community organizations doing some good work to protect our elders in Oakland Chinatown if you'd like to learn more. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share, press some buttons, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
From